You know, 1984 is somewhat prescient because I want to talk to you about the coup in Myanmar. I only learned about this morning, and it's quite chilling. I'm not a historian, nor am I especially versed in the history of Myanmar, but I'm going to open with a very brief description of the country's history as I understand it, because I think it sets the stage for a very interesting dynamic. So pay attention, okay? Myanmar, formerly known as Burma before a change in the anglicized version of its name, was being fucked by the British, as as one does, before it was made independent. Thanks to, and I apologize for the pronunciation of this name and any others over the course of this segment, Aung San. Aung San. Who was a pro-democracy leader, a revolutionary, and altogether seemed like a pretty cool dude, I think, by and by. This was back in the 40s, and for a time, then Burma, now Myanmar, which is what I'll call it from now on, was in a fairly tenuous and uneasy state of roughly autonomous development until a couple of decades later, the military seized control. Myanmar's military has always had a very strong presence in its government. The military does not just control itself, it also controls the national police, which is if you know anything about history, terrifying fucking thing to leave in the hands of the military. After the military took control of the Myanmar government, thus began a multi-decades-long period of a military dictatorship. And this continued for some time until the daughter of the state's original liberator, Aung San Suu Kyi, I believe I pronounced that at least somewhere in the ballpark of being correct, stepped forward and fought to make Myanmar democratic. Suu Kyi succeeded in this. Suu Kyi? Is it Suu Kyi? Suu Kyi. Gotcha. Succeeded in this effect to some extent. She was able to institute democratic reforms, and for her efforts, she was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. This was a significant venture. And a lot of people, I think Americans, they don't understand the scale of other countries. America's a big country. It is. If you had to guess, how many people do you think live in Myanmar? I'm genuinely asking you guys because I want to see what your expectations are. 5, 10 mil, thereabouts? 2, 3, 4? It's about 50 million people. Actually, I think about 53. About 53 million people. It's difficult to imagine that. I think that's a higher population than California population. California is our most populous state. Yeah, California is just about 40 million. And California has one of the largest economies in the world on its own. It's difficult to fathom the scale of some of these things sometimes, but this country, which for decades lived under military rule, was freed, though it came at a cost. Suu Kyi, again the daughter of the country's original liberator, was placed under house arrest for 15 years on her estate. She was able to, and again, I'm very much simplifying this, she was able to force the implementation of democratic reforms and elections, but not oust the military entirely. The military maintained a 15-year lockdown on her estate, and the military also maintained some degree of internal political control, though there were now elections. When Suu Kyi was released from her lockdown in, I think, was it 2011? Was that it was around that time. 2010, was it? Something, yes. She ran as the state councilor of Myanmar, and she won. And for the first time in a long time, it looked like Myanmar might see true democracy. Because now you have, think about how anime this is, okay? You have, the country is liberated by imperial control from the British, from somebody, and then their daughter fights for democracy, lives in lockdown for 15 years and then returns to lead that democracy under popular rule to bring about democratic reforms. Unfortunately, we have reached the apex of this historical context, and now we begin to reach the decline. You see, Suu Kyi was not a perfect leader in a number of ways, in two main ways, actually. An unwillingness to prevent genocide and an unwillingness to fully oust the military. See, the military of Myanmar maintained a great deal of political control, and I think around 2008, I could be wrong on that, but it was fairly recent. The military, no, not 2008, I'm sorry, it was quite a bit more recent, maybe 2014, perhaps? It was more recently than that. The military began a campaign to oust an ethnically and religiously marginalized community of Muslims from the country. Now, that ousting killed thousands and led to the exile of over 1 million Muslims from the country, which is, it's difficult to even fathom the scale of an exodus of that size. Not only did Suu Kyi not meaningfully fight against this, in fact, she kowtowed to the military in several ways during this process. She denied it was a genocide and denied foreign aid. Now, the complexities as to what she could have done or what she had the ability to do are beyond me. I'm sure there's quite a bit of nuance to it. And again, I want to remind you that there are plenty of people out there who have a greater understanding of Myanmar's history than I. I would encourage you to look at those people and look to those sources if you're interested in knowing more. But what I'm actually interested in talking about is coming up soon. See, after that, her reputation as a democracy-loving avatar of peace went down somewhat, which is unfortunate because just before that genocide, I believe President Obama in 2012 was the first American president to visit Myanmar, like first one, period, which was a really legitimizing incident for the state, you know. I mean, we all hate Obama because we're cool lefties, but you have to understand that an American president visiting like a former British colony is actually like a really legitimizing point in their history, you know, that we're America, we have that power. But things went downhill, of course, from there. And just recently, and I mean recently, there was an election. And the party which Suu Kyi represented, won, I think, about 70% of the vote. Her party ended up winning more than a supermajority of the parliament, something like 80% of the seats. I mean, it was a blowout. It was a blowout. Suu Kyi's democratic, flawed, very flawed, genocidal even, but democratic party won overwhelmingly against the opposition party, a military-backed opposition party. But the military-backed opposition party, and thus the military, and thus the national police, thought there was a little bit of voter fraud. Just a smidge. A little bit. And this morning, there was a coup. The military police seized the state, kicked out the council and the cabinet, instituted a 1-year state of emergency and a curfew, and said that they will need to rehold the elections in a year's time. Yeah, stop the steal. They're stopping the steal. So what interests me about this story, there are two main things. The first of which is that the tactics the military used to push this coup were essentially identical rhetorically to the ones the Republicans used. In a way, it's almost a vision into a world where the Republicans won in America. A world where maybe the military was a little bit more partisan, or the military had a little bit more control over the internal democratic process. Now, thankfully, America's institutions are a lot more autonomous. In Myanmar, I think 25% of parliament goes to like the military party no matter what, or something like that, which is pretty not great. That's not great for democracy. We don't have that, to my knowledge. I don't think so. So our institutions are stronger. We should be happy about that. But man, I gotta ask you guys, are you assuaged even slightly by the knowledge that the only thing which separated America from what's going on in Myanmar today was the strength of our institutions? Like, is that like particularly comforting? I mean, I'm glad our institutions are stronger than theirs, but it's like it's like it's a zombie apocalypse, okay? All right? And you've got your fortifications and the other group of survivors got theirs, okay? And your fortifications are pretty tough. Theirs not so much. Zombies come and knock and they break through their fortifications. Those survivors die. Democracy falls. Your fortifications live. Does that make the zombies outside any less of a threat? Does that make them any less of the antagonist in this situation? No. They remain exactly the same. The only difference is you were slightly better prepared. The Republican Party, and I want to be really clear about this, if they had had the ability to, absolutely and 100% would have instituted a military coup if that was a thing that our institutions had allowed for, okay? They pulled the gun on us. They pulled the trigger. The chamber was not loaded. But that doesn't mean it's not attempted murder. I've used this example before, but I need to reiterate it because it's shocking to see these exact strategies work in another country. And I said, when this was happening, not just on the 6th, but all the way back to November 3rd and onward, I said it multiple times that if this country had weaker institutions, that it would have fallen. But we didn't, because we didn't. But that doesn't change the status of the Republican Party. I mean, what did the Myanmar military do? They said there was election fraud. They said there was voter fraud. They said they are instituting a national emergency to preserve democracy. Keep that in mind. They're preserving democracy. All of this is being backed through the military-supported party. This isn't a military coup. It's actually just a temporary halt to democratic institutions to allow for a fair election, a proper election. The rhetoric is the same, and the outcome differs only for the circumstances outside of the control of the Republican Party. And that's terrifying. I mean, this is happening right now. This was a fairly bloodless coup. There are some pictures being taken from the New York Times. This was a fairly bloodless coup, as I understand it. There wasn't really much of a way to defend democracy because it's the military and it's the police. What the fuck are you going to do? Yeah, you can see military trucks rolling down through the street. There are soldiers near the Capitol building. Hey, funny. I remember that happening here. There were testimonials that were being given to reporters for the New York Times and to other news agencies. And most of the people who provided quotes or who spoke to those journalists refused to have their names listed. You know why? Because they knew that if they were, those names would go on public record and somebody would have looked them up. Which is terrifying. This is unfortunately a lesser of two evils situation because while I think for the most part Suu Kyi has been good for most of the country, I'm not a big genocide fan. Not a huge genocide fan myself personally, my personal opinion. Though in all likelihood that genocide would have taken place with or without Suu Kyi, so it could more be about her not being willing to oppose the military as aggressively as she should have. I don't know. Again, I'm sure this is very complicated, and I'm sure a full history lesson would take, well, it would take quite a bit of reading and quite a bit of talking. But it's very scary over there, and I'm wishing all the best of luck. I don't know if I have any fans from Myanmar, I suppose statistically speaking, it's likely that I have at least one. So I hope that one person is doing okay. I hope that individual is doing well. You know, maybe it's even two people. I don't know. Unfortunately, there's not really anything we can do. I mean, it's literally a military coup in a foreign country. That's somewhat outside of our power. Obviously, so the genocide of the Muslim population was condemned by the UN. I have no doubt that this action by the Myanmar military will be condemned by the United Nations and possibly by the United States as well. I doubt anything's going to happen. It is a country of 50 million people. We are not going to put boots on the ground over there. In all likelihood, the most we're going to see out of this is sanctions. It's actually frightening how little we can do to meaningfully, and I don't mean this euphemistically, by the way. I don't mean this like protect democracy, like how we protected democracy in Iraq. I mean really protecting democracy. It's really, really sad how little we can do to protect that. By we, I don't mean America. Fuck America. I mean the world. People. You know? Unironically, Iraq is more democratic now. Yeah, I think currently at this moment, it is true that Iraq, the country of Iraq, is indeed more democratic than Myanmar, which is, wait, what is this? This is a good note to end the segment on. With depressing stuff like this, I never know when to stop talking because I feel like I have to comfort everybody. What is this? Look at this. A woman conducts her aerobics class in Myanmar without realizing a coup was taking place. Behind her, a military convoy arrives at parliament. Sorry, is that copyrightable? I genuinely don't know. Will I get copyrighted for that? Is this not maximum 2020 vibes, by the way? Holy fuck. What? Can you explain to me Jesus, a woman like dancing with a fucking COVID mask on while a military coup takes place behind her? Oh, 2021, sorry. Does she realize? Well, Godspeed. Well, I hope she still doesn't know. I hope that right now she still doesn't know. She never turned around. She just walked back in and uploaded that video without actually looking at it, and she still doesn't know. And it's gonna be like 3 or 4 months before she finds out. You know, that's what I hope. I hope she's doing good. That's my one viewer in Myanmar, and I hope that she's doing good.